Chapter 20, Lesson 1, Pollution and Human Health. Essential questions. Explain how scientists use toxicology and epidemiology. Explain how pollution can come from both natural sources and human activities. Objectives. List 5 pollutants, their sources, and their possible effect on human health. Explain how scientists use toxicology and epidemiology. Explain how pollution can come from both natural sources and human activities. Describe the relationship between waste, pollution, and human health. Pollution causes illnesses directly and indirectly. Directly by poisoning, as in the cases of lead poisoning and lung cancer. Indirectly by infectious diseases that are spread in polluted environments. Examples of the diseases include cholera and river blindness, which are caused by organisms that inhibit polluted water. COVID-19. If someone sneezes or coughs, infectious particles can get in the air and on other surfaces. When someone breathes in the air or touches the surfaces, they can get contaminated. That is why we need to wear our masks properly to cover our nose and mouth. Environmental effects on health. The World Health Organization, WHO, has begun to collect data on how the environment affects human health. In one study, WHO estimates poor health by days of healthy life lost to death and disease in different world regions. The study shows that, in general, people in developing countries suffer greater health impacts. Why do you think that is? The main factor is the enormous role of infectious diseases, which are more common in crowded areas with poor sanitation. Density-dependent factors. Major types and effects of pollutants. Air pollution. Human causes are transportation, agriculture, industry, and heating. Human health effects are asthma, respiratory infections, heart disease, lung cancer. Water pollution. Human cause, transportation, agriculture, industry. The human health effects, diarrhea, cholera, stomach infections. Food, human causes, transportation, agriculture, industry, litter, specifically plastics. Human health effects, hormone imbalance, reproductive problems, digestive problems, cancers. Consumer products, human causes, single-use products like styrofoam cups and plates, plastic bottles, plastic bags, plastic containers. Human health effects, cancers, hypothyroids, hormone imbalances, problems with nervous systems, birth defects, infertility. Types and effects of pollutants. Pesticides from agriculture and landscaping can have nerve damage, birth defects, and cancer. Lead from lead paint and gasoline can cause brain damage and learning problems. Particulate matter from vehicle exhaust, burning waste, fires, and tobacco smoke. You can have respiratory damage, asthma, bronchitis, cancer. Coal dust from coal mining, possible effect is black lung disease. Bacteria in food. The source is poor sanitation and poor food handling, and possible effects are gastrointestinal infections. Toxicity. How dangerous is it? Toxicology is the study of toxic substances, including their nature, effects, detection, methods of treatment, and exposure control. Several pollutants have toxic poisonous effects. Persistent chemicals are chemicals that break down slowly in the environment. The pesticide DDT, which was banned, is an example. They are dangerous because more people are likely to come into contact with them. They are more likely to remain in the body. Biomagnification in other organisms. As the larger organisms eat the smaller organisms, they become more and more infected. And they have the problem with the birds. Their eggshells got very brittle and broke when the mother bird sat on the eggs. and the bird population declined. Toxicity. How dangerous is it? Almost any chemical can be harmful if taken in or ingested in large enough amounts. That is why medications have doses. Too much could be harmful. A dose is the amount of harmful substance to which a person is exposed. The damage to the health that results from exposure to a given dose is the response. We need to know how much of the pollutant is in the environment and how much is in the body to determine the effect of a pollutant on health. How dangerous is it? The toxic effect of a chemical depends on the dose, the exposure, the body size, the body's ability to break down the chemicals. Dose response curves. A dose response curve is a graph that shows the relative effect of various doses of a drug or chemical on an organism or organisms. Sometimes there's a threshold dose. Exposure to any amount of chemicals less than the threshold dose has no adverse effects on health. Exposure levels above the threshold dose usually leads to more or increased adverse effects. This is an example of a dose response curve. Epidemiology is the study of the distribution of diseases and populations and the study of factors that influence the occurrence and spread of disease. How do scientists use epidemiology? When an epidemic occurs, such as a widespread flu infection, health officials use their knowledge of epidemiology to take action. Epidemiologists are people who study diseases, collect data from health workers on when and where causes of the disease have occurred. Scientists gather the following information. They trace the disease to try to find its origin. They try to figure out how to prevent it from spreading. Health officials may ask questions such as, what do the people have in common? Were they all exposed to the same chemicals? How widespread is the disease? Scientists and health officials work together on risk assessments for pollutants. Risk assessment. Risk assessment is the scientific assessment, study, and management of risk, a scientific estimation of the likelihood of negative effects that may result from exposure to a specific hazard. Risk is the probability of a negative outcome. In the case of human health, risk is the probability of suffering a disease, injury, or death. Scientists and health officials work together on risk assessment for pollutants. Risk assessment may lead to government regulations on how and where a substance can be used. So when they have a substance, they're going to look and see what is the risk to people. They're going to assess the risk. If the risk is minimal, then they let you use it. If the risk is like a maximum risk, they will not let you use it. Pollution from natural sources. Some pollutants occur naturally in the environment. Naturally occurring pollutants usually become hazardous to health when they are concentrated above their normal levels in the environment. The odorless and radioactive gas radon from granite bedrock causes an estimated 15,000 to 22,000 cancer deaths every year in the United States. This gas is found in very low levels and in drinking water from rivers and lakes. It can be found at high levels in houses and other buildings, as well as underground water and well water. The most common pollutants from natural sources are dust, soot, and other particulates. Particulates are particles in the air that are small enough to breathe into the lungs. Particulates may be breathed in and become trapped in the tiny air sacs in our lungs. This results in irritation, which can make lung conditions such as chronic bronchitis and emphysema worse. Dust storms, wildfires, volcanic eruptions all produce large amounts of particulates. Pollution from human activity. Human activities release thousands of types of chemicals into the environment. We know surprisingly little about the health effects of most of these chemicals. Only about 10% of commercial chemicals have been tested for their toxicity, and about 1,000 new chemicals are introduced every year. Pollution from natural sources. Here's a sandstorm and a volcanic eruption. Burning fuels. Air pollution is still a major health problem, despite the advances in public health resulting from pollution control. Burning fuels in vehicles, home furnaces, power plants, and factories introduces enormous amounts of pollutants into the air, including the gas carbon monoxide and particulates. These pollutants and particulates contribute to premature death each year from asthma, heart disease, and lung disorders. Pesticides. Pesticides are chemicals designed to kill unwanted organisms such as insects, fungi, or weeds. Pesticides are beneficial in that they allow us to grow more food by reducing pest damage. But because pesticides are designed to kill organisms, they are often dangerous to humans in large doses. Industrial chemicals. We are exposed to low levels of industrial chemicals every day, particularly inside new buildings that have new furnishings. Older buildings were often painted using lead-based paint. Lead is directly linked to brain damage and learning disabilities. Often, industrial chemicals are not known to be toxic until they have been used for many years. Waste disposal. Much of the pollution in our environment is a byproduct of inadequate waste disposal. Although methods of disposing waste have improved, problems remain. Landfills are leaking. Toxic chemicals continue to be carried into our waterways, while incineration plants release toxic products into the air. Laws regulating waste disposal are not always enforced.